Hello. We're doing trench warfare. There will be a short film clip for you to watch, about 3 minutes. And then the handout will be in there and 10 questions, and that will be it. So this is really a pretty short class as far as all this stuff right here. Anyway, enjoy. All right, so we're going to talk about the trench warfare. We've talked about this off and on. Not the best way to try to fight a war, but you deal with what you deal with. The Germans, when they dug the trenches in, they actually kind of understood this was going to be a while. Although they wanted to win the battles quickly and end the war quickly, when they dug theirs, they actually did a better job. Because they knew it was probably going to be a long-term thing. The British didn't dig necessarily the best at first, because they were thinking short term. You know, they were not thinking this was going to be, oh, we're going to live here for the next 4 or 5 years, type of deal. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. And as we talk about it, we're going to find out there were different ways to dig these things, and they did not just dig them. You didn't dig them in just a long straight line, because if you did that, if an enemy jumped in or actually was able to get all the way across and came in,
he could shoot his gun.
Yeah, if he had a machine gun or whatever, he could just shoot right down the line and take out a bunch of people. So they actually zigzagged them and all this stuff in order to make it harder to do that. Okay, so trench warfare, of course, is a type of fighting where both sides builds deep trenches as a defense against the enemy. Okay, so these trenches can stretch for many miles and make it nearly impossible for one side to advance. And that's kind of the whole idea of war. You're trying to gain ground, drive your enemy back. So this is kind of like a stalemate. You're really not going anywhere real fast. Okay?
They can go for miles?
Oh yeah. Dude, just hold on. It gets better. During World War I, the Western Front, okay, and that's in France, as we talked about, was fought using trench warfare. Okay? By the end of 1914, both sides had built a series of trenches that went from the North Sea and through Belgium and France. Okay? As a result, neither side gained much ground for 3.5 years, from October 1914 to March of 1918. It's almost a stalemate on the Western Front.
They're just shooting at each other.
Okay? Yeah. Now, how were they built? Of course, they were dug by the soldiers, okay? And these, we're talking by hand. We're not talking they're bringing in heavy-duty machinery here digging these, okay? This is all being done by hand. Sometimes the soldiers just dug the trenches straight into the ground, and this method was called entrenching, okay? And in fact, that's what you call the little tool, the little shovel that they have is an entrenching tool. That's where it came from, okay? It was fast, but it left soldiers open to enemy fire while they were digging. Now, sometimes they would build the trenches by extending. You already had a trench. You would actually just extend one end of it.
Yeah, like you stay in the trench and just...
Yeah, that was a little bit safer, obviously.
Yeah, but it made the trench wider, which is easier to throw.
And this method was called sapling, okay? So... But that's when you're already in a trench and you're just expanding it, basically, making it longer. Okay.
So that makes it longer.
It was safer, but it took longer to do this. Okay. The most secret way to build a trench, and I cannot imagine this one, was you actually made a tunnel and then just removed the roof.
No, I'm not gonna.
Okay. To me, that would just be scary. That would be scary as all get out. I'd just about to be shot at as to be buried alive. That would not be a way to go.
I'd rather get shot.
But it was the safest method as far as the enemy being able to get to you. But it was also obviously the most difficult of any of the trenching. Yes.
I mean, the ground must have been soft. You know, they weren't digging that deep, were they? I mean,
Well, they're going 12 feet deep.
Oh, so would the roof collapse on them because it's just dirt?
Oh, yeah.
But it did something.
And my guess is they probably did not go that, I mean, they dug deep, but they probably left a very thin layer
Above them.
above them.
So if
would
it
be
fell
my
on them, it
guess.
was just going to like go up to their
Yeah.
ankles or calf.
I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, that's what I would do instead of just digging a tunnel and then having to dig, 8 feet of dirt out from on top of me. That wouldn't make much sense. So, now, of course, no man's land. This is the land that was between the two enemy trench lines. Okay, that's the no man's land. And this land was sometimes covered with barbed wire and landmines.
They have landmines?
They had landmines. Now, the bad part about landmines is, you got to understand, these are not real sophisticated, and even in World War I, World War II, and up through Korea, think about it, it's wet, it's cold, these things freezes, and that causes them to go off. When they freeze, and then when they thaw out, start to thaw out, they will go off. So, so
They're in Europe,
yeah. So this is again, not the ideal situation to find yourself in. The enemy trenches was generally around 50 to 250 yards apart. Now, by the time you get to Vietnam, you've got a whole lot more sophisticated at this point in time. They have what is known as the bouncing Bettys. Okay, that's the ones that are pressure release, where if you step on it, it doesn't go off. It's when you step off of it that it blows up.
That's weird.
So if you step onto it, I bet that's happened before. Someone just
Oh,
steps
it happened a lot, because, yeah.
Oh, then there's no landmine.
Yep.
So
Okay.
wait, what was the World War I landmine? You just step on
That
it.
gives you a
You
chance
step
to
on that
disarm
one.
it, though. That gives you a chance to disarm it, though.
Yeah, you can disarm it.
No, it's a
Yeah,
landmine.
yeah, sure you can. All you boys who watch the movies, you step on a bouncing Betty, that's the first thing you thought, oh, well, I just need to get bond ordnance up here to disarm this while I'm standing on it.
And there's people shooting at me right now.
Yeah, okay. What were the trenches like? The typical trench was dug around 12 feet deep. Okay, that's about 2 feet deeper than a basketball goal, Brock. There were often an embankment at the top of the trench and barbed wire fencing. Okay? Some trenches were reinforced with wood beams or sandbags. All of them had sandbags built up. That's what the film that you're going to watch will kind of help explain that a little bit. The bottom of the trench was usually covered with wooden boards that was called duck boards. And they were actually set up, they tried to set these things up a little bit. They dug out ground and tried to put the boards in there where they actually set up off the ground. And they were slats. It was not like it was a big piece of plywood or something. They were slatted, so the water, when it rained, the water would go down through them and soak into the ground. And that way the soldiers could hopefully keep their feet somewhat dry without just standing in, ankle deep or sometimes knee deep mud and water. Yes, Leah?
Well, that happened a lot.
The other paper,
Yeah, it happened a lot.
this paper says Germans trenches were generally built, better built than those of the Allies. Is that an example? It's on the other sheet.
Yes, I know, but we're not there yet, son.
No, but it's that
But
example.
we're not there yet, son. Let's get there, and we'll talk about
There's
it.
two different examples.
We will talk about it. Okay?
How did they shoot?
What?
How did they shoot if it's 12 feet deep?
We'll kind of talk about a little bit about how that happened. Okay? Hi.
Hi. Yes.
All right.
Well, then say hi to your mommy. Hey, mommy. Love you.
We bought in a bag for one of our students. Okay.
Well, there's some.
Now, so anyway, the whole idea of the duck board was meant to keep the soldiers' feet above the water that would collect at the bottom of the trench. You think about Europe in wintertime, it's wet, it's rainy, it's snowing, it is not a nice place to be.
In
Okay?
Europe, it's freezing.
Yep. The trenches weren't dug in one long straight line. Okay, they were usually built more of a system of trenches. Okay, they were dug in zigzag patterns, which is what we talked about to help that kept the enemy, if they did manage to get in, they couldn't just shoot down a straight line and take out a lot of people. And they did have different levels. Okay, most of them had like 3 different levels. You had your front lines, where if you were up there, you actually was getting ready. You were fighting. Then you had one where you would fall back. It was kind of like a respite area. then you would have another one where you would fall back, but you would rotate and spend like a week in each one of these things. Now, that doesn't mean you were off duty, you were constantly doing something, but you were not just always right up on the front line, 24 hours a day for 4 years or whatever. Life in the trenches. They generally rotated through 3 stages at the front. Excuse me, I got choked up. They would spend some time in the front line trenches, sometime in the support trench, and then sometimes in the resting. They almost always had some sort of a job to do, whether it was repairing the trenches, guard duty, moving supplies, undergoing inspections. You'd like to think they didn't undergo a lot of inspections, but being the Army, my guess is they did. Or cleaning their weapons. So there was always something to do. Okay, there was not like, you did not have just days off where you just, kick back and didn't worry about the war anymore.
Did you have to
Okay.
clean your gun?
You cleaned them every time you came in. Yes, Caleb?
So, the front line, of course, be where they're fighting.
Yep.
The resting will probably be where, like, they slept, and that stuff.
Yeah, a little bit more. They actually did have dugouts up even on the front line where they could, if their fighting wasn't going on, where some of them could go in and take a nap or
And
whatever.
the support trenches, was that, like, where all the supplies were stocked?
Yeah, supplies, you had, that was where if you were wounded, they had a place, they called it the dressing room. It wasn't where they changed clothes, it was actually where you went and,
They dressed.
was it a tent? Yeah, they dressed your wounds is basically what they did. Okay? Conditions in the trenches. The trenches were not nice, clean places. They were actually quite disgusting. There were all sorts of pests living in the trenches, including rats, lice, frogs. The rats were everywhere. They got into the soldiers' food. They ate just about everything. They would come up, if a soldier was sleeping, they would come up and start nibbling on the soldier.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Unfortunately, people that had been killed, the rats would actually start eating on their bodies, as you call it, okay? I know it sounds, it's disgusting, and I apologize, but that's just the way it was. The lice was also a major problem. They made the soldiers itch horribly, and of course they caused a disease called trench fever.
And if one person got it, most.
Oh yeah, and trust me, if one person in that thing got it, they all had it.
You put on someone else's hat.
The weather also contributed to rough conditions in the trenches. Rain caused the trenches to flood and get muddy. Mud could clog up weapons, okay, and make it hard to move in battle. Also, that constant moisture would cause an infection called trench foot, okay, and that is, it would get so bad.
More people
If they went untreated, it could become so bad that a soldier's foot or feet would actually have to be amputated. Okay, if they would, basically their feet would start to rot and get diseased, and in order to save their life, they would actually have to cut their foot off. They have to take their feet. Okay. Cold weather was dangerous too. Soldiers would lose fingers or toes due to frostbite. Some would die from exposure to the cold. Frostbite, if you've ever seen pictures of people that get like a finger or a toe gets frostbite, it dies, basically, yeah, the appendage dies and it turns this, there's no blood supply. So it dies, it'll turn black, and it will actually just almost crumble away. It's pretty nasty. Yeah, it's some pretty nasty stuff. Yes?
On the first picture, on this page right here.
Yes.
No, not that page, this page.
This one?
The one where the Shinjas during the battle of this song.
Yeah.
You can see how the Allies, they have a lot more dirt in that, or the Germans, they have a lot more
Yeah,
wood.
Germans were set up a little bit better.
Well, yeah, but they
As
were
you
kind
can
of on
tell.
their own turf, really.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
have lots of wood.
Yep. Yeah, the Germans, again, Germans was in it, they kind of understood this was probably going to be a stalemate, so they were a little bit more savvy when it came to building than the Brits were at first. Okay, interesting facts. This is pretty cool. It is estimated that if all the trenches built along the Western Front was laid end to end, they would total over 25,000 miles.
25,000?
25,000 miles.
That's like way over, like traveling across the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
And back, and back, and back.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trenches needed constant repair, or they would erode from the weather and enemy bombs. Okay. The British said it took 450 men 6 hours to build a 250 meter of trench system.
And there's 25,000 now.
Yep. Most of the raids took place at night when soldiers could sneak across the no man's land in the dark.
The raids to
Okay.
the trenches?
Yep. Each morning, though, the soldier would have to stand to, which meant they would stand up and prepare for an attack. Because if you're going to attack your enemy, for whatever reason, people like to attack at dawn.
When they're
Okay.
just waking up.
That,
and
that
they're
is when you want to attack.
They're not ready.
Okay. Yeah, that's the idea, but because everyone knows it, everybody's up and ready for it. Because you can't see quite as well at night here. Okay. You're in the middle. You're out. Yeah, they did not have night vision goggles in these days, or the big floodlights,
It's
or
pitch
any of
black.
that.
You
Okay.
can't see anything. They're in the middle of-
Today it would be a little bit different. Yeah, absolutely. Today would be our technology today would make it a little different.
But they're in the middle of
Okay.
Even it's the 1970s, they had thermostats.
Yep. The technical soldier in the trenches was armed with a rifle, a bayonet, and hand grenades, and that was pretty much what he had. Okay. All right. We're going to probably answer a couple of questions that may or may not make any sense. But anyway, if you read your handout, you should be able to answer the questions, and I will include the link to the little video that they're getting ready to watch. Bye.